Chabot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here today. We very much appreciate it. The humanitarian situation in Idlib province, Syria, is alarming. Innocent civilians and women and children have been slaughtered. Could you tell us what Iran or its proxies, what their involvement has been there relative to this ongoing assault on those civilians?
So consistently, since the previous administration's decision to allow the Russians to come into Syria, that combined with the long history of Iranian influence in parts of Syria has led us to where we are today. You can see with the Israeli strikes that are taking place against Iranians in Syria, you can see the work that the United States is doing in the north and east. We have an enormous Iranian problem inside of Syria. These attacks that are Syrian regime-led, Iranian-supported, Hezbollah-supported, underwritten by Iran, along with the Russians, are now causing a humanitarian calamity in Syria that once again re-ups what we saw several years back. The numbers range from 750,000 to 1.1 million people in that upper northwest part of Idlib province, many of whom will be displaced, too many of whom will be killed. And our mission set has been diplomatic to urge the parties to a ceasefire, both bilaterally with each of the participants. We have a UN Security Council resolution that sadly the regime will not adhere to, that the Iranians will not adhere to, which was designed to find the political resolutions, UN Security Council Resolution 2254. We've not been able to make progress there. So in light of that, we have done what we can with American assistance, stabilization assistance throughout the region to try to lend both food and assistance and medical through USAID and to try and build back some of the institutions so that they'll be capable of pushing back against what the Russians and the Iranians and the Syrians are doing in this hellish place of Idlib.
Thank you. The UN arms embargo on Iran expires next year. Are our European partners committed to extending the embargo? What can we do to put pressure on China and Russia to cooperate as well?
So yes, one of the central flaws of the JCPOA was that you had very short duration for many of the most important provisions. The first really significant provision expires in October of this year, so now just a handful of months away, where the very missiles that rained down on our American forces will be permissibly sold, lawfully sold to the Iranians come October of this year. That's a big flaw in a deal. And so we're working diplomatically. We are hopeful that the Europeans will take seriously this risk, that there'll be Chinese weapon systems, Russian weapon systems sold into Iran. I am confident that they are gearing up already to deliver those weapons come October with the full authority, with no UN Security Council resolution prohibiting it. We will work at the UN. We will try to convince the Russians and the Chinese not to veto that resolution, and we will urge our European colleagues to use the tools that they have at hand to prevent conventional weapon sales from once again being lawfully sold to the world's largest state sponsor of terror.
Thank you. And finally, Iran's proxy in Lebanon, of course, is Hezbollah. How has this administration's maximum pressure campaign impacted Iran's ability to support Hezbollah in Lebanon?
So we've had impact, but not enough. We've had a material change in their capacity to do harm. That is, they no longer have access to all of the capital that they had under the JCPOA. We have restricted Hezbollah's money, their resources. There's more work to do there. We have also used our diplomatic efforts to build out a coalition to support the Lebanese government to do the reforms that you can see. You can see the protests in the streets in Beirut and outside of Beirut in Lebanon as well. You can see the Lebanese people are exhausted from Iran. They're exhausted from Hezbollah. And you see the same thing in Iraq. You see protests in Tahrir Square. These aren't protests against the United States of America seeking our departure. They are protests for the people of Iraq and Lebanon who want a sovereign, non-sectarian, non-Iranian-dominated government. Our diplomatic mission is to do all that we can to assist those governments to make this transition from Hezbollah-backed or Iranian-controlled in Iraq to governments that are sovereign, independent, and deliver on what their the people of their countries really want and desperately need.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Go back.